Have you ever wondered what happens to the soul after we leave this world? This question weighs on many people, especially in their later years, as memories accumulate and the future becomes quieter. For some, it's a doubt that surfaces in the silence of the night. For others, it's a desire to understand if there's continuity, if our essence lives on, if the bonds we've built somehow remain. Edgar Cayce, one of the most studied figures in spirituality of the last century, dedicated a good part of his life to answering questions like this. According to him, death is not the end, but a transition. And understanding this process can completely change the way we live in the present. This isn't about blind faith, but about reflecting based on accounts, experiences, and investigations that spanned decades. What Cayce saw and reported can bring not only answers but also comfort and clarity to those seeking peace of heart in the face of the inevitable. For many seniors, the approach of finitude awakens not only fear, but also a profound curiosity. It's not uncommon for this stage of life to bring with it a closer look at what comes next. Therefore, understanding Cayce's visions can be a key to easing anxieties and finding serenity. If this content resonates with you, please subscribe to the channel and leave a like. This way we can continue to bring you topics that truly matter. Cayce described in his sessions that, upon dying, the soul undergoes a kind of liberation. The physical body becomes still, but consciousness remains alive, passing through subtle layers that connect this existence to other dimensions. What he reported was not a product of imagination, but of trance states in which he accessed detailed information with a precision that surprised even the doctors of his time. According to him, the soul's journey after death is individual, but it follows natural patterns. The first moment after death, he said, would be one of total lucidity. Cayce stated that the soul immediately perceives it has left the body. It observes the scene of its passing, as if standing beside its own body, seeing everything clearly and without pain. This instant, he said, is marked by an intense peace, unlike any sensation experienced in life. There is no despair, only understanding. For those who were ill, the liberation from the body brings relief. For those who passed suddenly, there may be brief confusion, but a feeling of welcome soon emerges. Cayce reported that many souls are greeted by loved ones who have already passed, creating a less lonely and more familiar transition environment. These encounters are not illusions, but real manifestations that help the soul understand that its journey continues on another frequency of existence. In this initial stage, the soul is still close to the material world. According to Cayce, it's common for it to remain for days observing events around it, including wakes and farewells. It picks up feelings, words spoken aloud or in thought, and can perceive the impact of its absence on those left behind. For this reason, Cayce warned about the importance of the emotional environment after death. Words spoken with love, sincere prayers, and thoughts of gratitude create an energy field that helps the soul move on in peace. Intense despair, anger, or excessive attachment, however, can temporarily tether the soul to this plane, making its crossing difficult. The connection between the living and the departed does not immediately break. During this period, the soul more deeply understands the value of the life it lived and begins to prepare for the next stage of existence. From the third or fourth day, Cayce explained that the soul begins to gradually move away from the earthly sphere. This does not mean cutting ties, but changing frequency. It's like tuning into a new channel. The soul moves toward what he called the astral plane, a space where consciousness comes into contact with everything that was lived, thought, and felt. In this plane, there are no external judgments, but rather an inner review. The soul sees the significant moments of its journey, the choices made, the affections nurtured, and the mistakes committed. This review does not happen with pain or punishment, but with clarity and responsibility. Cayce affirmed that this process is not imposed by a higher entity, but is the soul itself, in a state of expanded lucidity, recognizing where it can evolve and what it still needs to learn in future experiences. This moment of review is one of the most significant of the entire journey. It's not a courtroom but a mirror. The soul understands that everything it experienced had a purpose, even what now seems to have been wasted suffering. Cayce said that pain has a function, that mistakes are not condemnations, but parts of continuous learning. This perspective removes the burden of guilt and encourages growth. Many seniors carry regrets for past decisions, for words left unsaid, or for relationships that found no resolution. Knowing that the soul can see all this in a broader, more loving way can bring relief. According to Cayce, the soul not only reviews but also feels the impact of what it generated in others, both positive and negative. It is a profound invitation to empathy and the evolution of the spirit. After this stage of life review, Cayce stated that the soul chooses or is guided to follow different paths according to its level of consciousness and evolution. Some remain in intermediate planes, where they learn, rest, or assist other consciousnesses. Others advance to higher spheres, which he described as regions of light, harmony, and wisdom. It is not a heaven in the religious sense, but a dimension of expanded understanding. There, the soul comes into contact with universal truths and better understands its role in the cycle of existence. For Cayce, no one is condemned to a fixed state. Evolution is constant, and even those who made many mistakes receive opportunities for new beginnings. This breaks down the idea of eternal punishment and encourages a more constructive view of death. What he said was that the spirit lives on, in constant motion, and always connected to its original source. One of the most delicate revelations in Cayce's readings involved the role of thought after death. According to him, the soul carries with it the mental patterns it cultivated in life. This means that people dominated by fear, hatred, or extreme attachment may attract similar realities on the subtle plane. Those who cultivated love, understanding, and gratitude, however, move on to more harmonious environments. Cayce never stated this as a form of punishment, but as a natural reflection of the vibrations each person emits. Just as we reap what we sow in physical life, this is amplified on the spiritual plane. This perspective reinforces the importance of working internally on emotions, even in old age. It is possible to change, grow, and improve at any age. For Cayce, there is no delay when it comes to the soul. Every personal transformation made here has a direct impact on the journey that begins after passing. Another important point he emphasized was the continuity of bonds. Death, according to Cayce, does not sever true connections. Parents remain connected to children, partners maintain ties, and deep friendships stay active. This does not mean the soul is trapped, but that true love transcends the limits of the body. In many of his sessions, Cayce reported spiritual messages from loved ones who still accompanied their families, offering comfort, inspiration, or protection. He also explained that these presences should not be feared, as they have no intention of causing disturbance. On the contrary, they are manifestations of affection that endure through time. For seniors who have lost dear ones, this idea can bring comfort. Knowing that bonds continue and that there is a subtle exchange between worlds can ease grief and bring new meaning to absence. Cayce also mentioned that some souls choose to return. This relates to the idea of reincarnation, which he discussed quite naturally. For him, the soul goes through various experiences in different bodies and eras, always with the purpose of growing, learning, and making amends for what was left undone. Death, then, would simply be a pause between one life and another. But it is not a rigid rule. Some souls remain longer on the spiritual plane before deciding to return. Others come back more quickly, according to their evolutionary needs. The most important thing, according to Cayce, is that there are no arbitrary punishments, only opportunities. This view can help seniors look at their own lives with more lightness, understanding that what wasn't possible now may be experienced later, with more wisdom and preparation. The cycle does not end with the last breath. It merely transforms. In his accounts, Cayce also described that time on the spiritual plane does not follow the same rhythm as on earth. There, perception is different. Minutes can seem like days, and decades can be felt as moments. This shift in reference allows the soul to experience intense events in a short, earthly time. Therefore, the process of healing, learning, or deciding about reincarnation occurs at the soul's own pace without rush or external demands. This aspect is especially comforting for those who feel guilty about having lived in a rushed manner or for not having been able to complete certain cycles. According to Cayce, the soul will have enough time to understand, heal, and evolve on the subtle plane. It is not necessary to depart in absolute peace, as peace can be built after death with the support of guides and ongoing learning, even without the physical body. It is common for older individuals to ask if it's possible to have contact with those who have passed on. Cayce said yes, but this contact doesn't happen as many imagine. It's not about direct conversations or spectacular signs, but rather subtle perceptions, a vivid dream, a sudden thought, a feeling of presence in difficult moments can be ways in which those who have passed manifest themselves. The most important thing, according to him, is to keep an open heart and not seek answers with anxiety. The connection is clearer when there is serenity. He also explained that prayer holds great power in this process. Praying sincerely, speaking to those who have passed and wishing them light are ways to maintain the bond and help both the other and oneself. For many seniors, this possibility of silent dialogue is a real and daily comfort, which redefines longing and brings hope. Another aspect mentioned by Cayce, often overlooked by other traditions, is the impact of intentions at the moment of death. He stated that the way a person faces their final moments directly influences their transition. When there is acceptance, gratitude, and surrender, the process is lighter and more harmonious. But when there is resistance, intense fear, or accumulated resentment, the soul may face greater difficulty understanding that it is no longer on the physical plane. This is not a punishment, but a natural consequence of the energy that consciousness carries. For this reason, Cayce always advised family members and caregivers to offer words of peace and encouragement in the final moments. The farewell should be enveloped in love, even when the pain is great. This attitude helps both the one who departs and those who remain, and even when this was not possible, the soul will always find paths to healing after the transition. Cayce also spoke about what are called near-death experiences, which occur when someone hovers between life and death for moments and returns with lucid memories. He affirmed that these accounts are legitimate and are part of the spiritual process. Many who went through this described tunnels of light, reunions with loved ones, and an indescribable feeling of peace. For him, these experiences are proof of the soul's continuity and serve as preparation for what will come after definitive death. They show that consciousness is not limited to the brain or the body. In his readings, Cayce vividly described these intermediate states and validated them as windows to broader understanding. For seniors who fear the end, knowing about these experiences can bring a new perspective, one that is more peaceful and based on consistent accounts from ordinary people who lived something extraordinary. The soul's journey, as described by Cayce, does not end in a single life nor in a single post-death stage. It is continuous, dynamic, and deeply connected to learning and love. According to him, the soul is always in motion, whether to evolve or to support other consciousnesses. Even after death, it is possible to grow, forgive, understand, and start anew. This view transforms the idea of an end into a bridge, and although this bridge is not visible to the eyes, it is felt by the heart. Cayce never promised absolute answers, but offered paths for deep reflection. His words do not impose truths but invite inner listening. For many seniors, this approach is more respectful and welcoming than rigid doctrines. It allows each person to find their own understanding, based on experience, feeling, and the search for something that goes beyond matter. It's natural, as the years pass, for the mind to seek meaning in all that has been lived, the joys, the losses, the mistakes, the silences. Everything seems to take on a new weight when one knows that the timeline is more ahead than behind. Cayce emphasized that nothing is wasted, not even the pains that seemed purposeless. Every lived moment contributes to the fabric of the soul. The way we treat others, the choices made, and the intentions behind each gesture are recorded at deep levels of consciousness, and it is this collection that the soul carries with it. For this reason, Cayce said that it is never too late to change. Even in the last years of life, it is possible to transform thoughts, adjust behaviors, and seek reconciliations. Spiritual time is generous. It embraces each step with respect, without hurry, allowing the being to flourish at its own pace even after death. For many, the topic of death remains surrounded by taboos, fears, and denial. But Cayce invites us to look at it more naturally. He said that understanding death is a way to live better. When we stop fearing it as an absolute end, we gain more freedom to love, forgive, and appreciate the present moments. This understanding does not eliminate the pain of loss, but offers us a solid foundation for dealing with it. Knowing that the soul lives on, that it continues to learn, and that bonds are not broken, can ease suffering and inspire more conscious attitudes in life. For seniors, this view can mean a reunion with peace. After all, by understanding that every farewell is a passage and that every life leaves seeds in time, it is possible to face the future with more courage. Cayce did not ask for belief, only attention to what many already feel but cannot name. Cayce's revelations were not made to scare or convince, but to open pathways. His work spanned generations, inspiring doctors, researchers, and ordinary people seeking to understand what comes next. And despite some criticism, his readings continue to be a source of comfort and guidance. Many accounts confirm what he described with such clarity, even in times when little was openly discussed about spirituality. For the senior audience, learning about these ideas can be an opportunity to reconstruct their relationship with time, with the past, and with their own soul. The fear of death does not have to be a silent burden. It can become a sincere question that opens doors to new answers. And the closer we get to understanding what we truly are, the more we can live with serenity, purpose, and meaning. In many of his sessions, Cayce mentioned that the true purpose of physical life is not material comfort or the accumulation of possessions, but inner transformation. Life, he said, is a school, and each person is a soul in a learning phase. Death, therefore, is not a failure or a punishment, but a spiritual graduation. For seniors, this metaphor makes sense. After decades of experiences, joys, and challenges, there comes a time when one begins to see life as a cycle. Cayce said that it doesn't matter whether we made mistakes or succeeded, but rather how much we were capable of loving and learning. This changes everything. Life ceases to be a race for recognition and becomes a journey of consciousness. Even those who feel they wasted time or opportunities can find meaning in the crossing, because the soul, according to him, is never lost. It simply continues, with new chances for growth and understanding. Throughout his years of work, Cayce recorded thousands of accounts, always reaffirming that no soul is forgotten or abandoned. Everyone, without exception, follows a unique and sacred path after death. This view brings profound relief to those who fear eternal loneliness or disconnection from loved ones. The soul, in its essence, is made of light and is always connected to the creative source, regardless of how each person names it. Cayce spoke of this with simplicity, without promising miracles or fantasies. He merely shared what he saw in his trance states, souls continuing, learning, reuniting, and preparing for new cycles. For the senior audience, these words can be like an anchor, something that sustains and calms in the face of the uncertainties of the end. There is no rush, no cruel judgment, just a continuous flow of experiences toward wisdom. It's important to remember that Cayce didn't ask anyone to abandon their beliefs. On the contrary, he reinforced that all spiritual traditions carry truths and valid paths. His goal was to broaden understanding, offering a bridge between science, spirituality, and human experience. This stance makes his legacy accessible and respectful, even for those who have never heard of him before. For seniors, this openness is especially valuable. At this stage of life, people are no longer seeking rigid doctrines, but answers that resonate with their lived history. Cayce understood this, which is why his messages remain so relevant. He offered not absolute certainties, but sincere possibilities for understanding. And by doing so, he helped each person reclaim their own faith in the continuity of life, the strength of the spirit, and the beauty of all that can still be experienced, even beyond the physical. As we age, it is natural for the body to slow down and the mind to seek more quiet. but the spirit that remains alert, full of stories, memories, and hopes. Cayce said that the aging soul carries a rich baggage and that upon dying, it loses nothing of what truly matters. The affectionate memories, the profound learnings, the acts of love and generosity travel with it. None of this fades away. The soul carries the essential. For those who worry about what they will leave behind, this view can be comforting. Possessions stay, but affections continue. Significant experiences do not disappear. They transform into wisdom that will accompany the soul in its next stage. Thus, death is not a loss, but continuity. And this changes how we view our days, our relationships, and even the act of aging itself. It is possible that, hearing all this, you may feel relief, but also have doubts. That is normal. Cayce himself said that each soul understands in its own time. The important thing is not to accept everything as immediate truth, but to allow yourself to reflect, to allow yourself to feel, and above all, to allow yourself to live with more lightness. For seniors, this can be a turning point. Knowing that the soul continues, that bonds persist, and that love echoes beyond physical life can transform how each day is lived. It can bring more presence, more kindness, more meaning. After all, if the soul is eternal, every moment becomes even more precious. Cayce doesn't offer ready-made answers, but provides maps, and each person is free to follow them in their own way, at their own pace, with the heart as a guide. And perhaps that is exactly what matters most on this journey. If this video brought some peace to your heart, or made you think differently about life and what comes after it, please consider sharing it with someone who might also benefit. Subscribe to the channel to follow new content like this, which deals with the soul, consciousness, and topics that truly matter. Our goal is to build a space for reflection, comfort, and learning, especially for you who have lived so many stages of life and are now seeking deeper understanding. Always remember, age does not limit discovery, and it is never too late to understand what lies beyond what the eyes can see. Cayce believed that every soul has its time and its light. May yours, like that of all whom you love, follow in peace, with clarity, and with the respect it deserves. And may the end of life not be a final period, but merely a comma in a much larger story.